It was a quiet Thursday evening in Cedar Grove, Ohio. The streets were almost empty, the kind of night where even the wind seemed to hesitate, brushing against the lampposts in whispers. In the center of town, the Cedar Grove Historical Museum stood like a sentinel, its brick facade glowing under the amber streetlights. Inside, the polished wood floors gleamed, and centuries-old clocks ticked in solemn, measured harmony. Nathaniel Hargrove, a 42-year-old collector and museum curator, walked through the exhibits with precise, deliberate steps. His attention to detail was impeccable. He had catalogued every item in the museum dozens of times, but tonight something felt wrong. He had been notified earlier that week of a minor discrepancy in the records. One of the 17th century pocket watches in the museum's private collection showed an unexplained movement in its display. At first, he thought it was a mechanical fault. But as he stepped closer to the display, he noticed something subtle. The clock was slightly tilted, its base bearing faint, fresh scratches. Nathaniel's breath hitched. The museum security system beeped faintly from the corner console. Cameras showed the empty hallways, yet the feed from the eastern gallery appeared to skip, an unusual anomaly. He jotted down every detail in his leather-bound notebook: the tilt of the clock, the scratches, the faint metallic odor in the air. Every note precise, methodical. Document everything. Nothing is insignificant. A creak from the northwest gallery froze him mid-step. Someone was still in the building. Or had been. Nathaniel's pulse quickened. He approached the gallery cautiously. Footsteps soft, his eyes scanning every shadow. Every reflection on the polished floors. He found another sign. Tiny smudges on the velvet lining of a display case that hadn't been touched in decades. And then he noticed a small, folded note tucked under the base of a clock, as if left deliberately. He picked it up. The paper was blank except for a single phrase, written in elegant script: "The past remembers what you forget." A chill ran down his spine. Someone had been here with intent. But who? And why target this collection, which was known only to a handful of people in the entire country? Nathaniel stepped back and surveyed the room. Every shadow seemed alive. The air was thick with anticipation, tension, the unspoken weight of history pressing down on him. It was a strange mix: fear, curiosity, and an inexplicable urgency. He couldn't leave. Not yet. Then, the unmistakable sound of metal shifting, soft, deliberate, echoed from the corner where the rarest artifacts were kept. He froze, heart pounding. Whoever it was, they were moving carefully, almost ritualistically, handling the artifacts like sacred objects. Nathaniel crouched behind a column, notebook still in hand, recording every detail mentally as much as physically. He had learned early in his career that documentation was the key to truth. And tonight, truth would not reveal itself willingly. A faint whistle, almost like someone testing the acoustics of the gallery, cut through the silence. Nathaniel realized, in that moment, he was not dealing with an ordinary thief. Whoever had been here understood the history, the value, and the stories behind these objects. This was someone who respected the artifacts too much to damage them carelessly, but respected the law even less. He whispered under his breath, barely moving his lips, "Who are you? Why here? Why now?" Nathaniel's mind raced as he crept further into the dimly lit gallery. Every tick of the antique clock seemed louder now, echoing through the room like distant gunfire. He paused by a display case containing a 19th century daguerreotype collection, his breath shallow. The faint metallic scent persisted, mingling with the faint dust of centuries-old paper. And He pulled out his notebook, flipping to a fresh page. Note every anomaly. Record every sound. Time is critical. The words felt heavier tonight, almost prophetic. From the corner of his eye, he caught a flicker of movement, a shadow slipping between two pedestals. His pulse quickened. Whoever was here moved with precision, like they had rehearsed this intrusion. They didn't stumble over the exhibits, didn't trigger the faintest alarm. Nathaniel ducked behind a display, gripping the notebook tightly. He realized this was more than a simple theft. This was meticulous, almost obsessive. And he could not shake the feeling that the intruder was leaving him a message. Every footprint, every scratch, every note carefully placed. It was as if the museum itself was speaking through the intruder's actions. A sudden creak came from the western gallery. Nathaniel froze again, straining to listen. Then, a whisper of paper rustling, deliberate, slow. He crouched lower, heart hammering, and saw it, a small envelope, cream-colored, lying next to a stack of antique ledgers. He reached for it carefully, aware that any sudden movement could alert whoever, or whatever, was in the building. Inside the envelope was a single sheet of paper, neatly typed. No signature. No return address. Just a cryptic line, "History does not forgive the careless. Check the ledger." Nathaniel's stomach tightened. The ledgers were old, fragile, and kept meticulously locked behind glass. Yet here it was, almost taunting him. He carefully opened the case, lifted the glass, and began flipping through the pages. Each entry detailed donations, acquisitions, and exchanges spanning decades, some of which were never fully documented elsewhere. His eyes caught something odd. Several entries listed artifacts that no longer existed, or so the official records claimed. They weren't missing. They had been deliberately removed. And all entries shared one trait. They were from private collections, mostly European, acquired under specific, sometimes mysterious circumstances. He scribbled notes furiously. Someone had studied this museum, these ledgers, in painstaking detail. Someone knew what Nathaniel might overlook, who might have access, and how to manipulate the environment to their advantage. A sudden knock, soft, almost polite, came from the hallway outside the gallery. Nathaniel froze, his hand still clutching the fragile envelope. No one was supposed to be here at this hour. He scanned the room, noting the shadows, the angles, the possible exits. Then came another sound, a faint click, like a camera shutter. Someone was documenting his every move. Not physically following him yet, but recording, observing. The thought sent a chill down his spine. He whispered to himself, more to steady his own nerves than for anyone else. This isn't random. This is planned. Everything here is deliberate. Nathaniel's attention returned to the ledgers. A pattern emerged, a subtle code embedded in acquisition dates, donor initials, and catalog numbers. Someone had left a trail of breadcrumbs across decades, leading to a single artifact, a small, intricately carved music box rumored to conceal a map to a long-lost private collection. Hidden during the early 1900s by a wealthy industrialist. The realization hit him hard. Whoever had been here was after more than a single artifact. They were after knowledge. A secret carefully buried beneath layers of history and deception. He glanced up at the clock, noting that only 10 minutes had passed since he first discovered the envelope. Every second counted. He had to understand the pattern before anyone else arrived, or worse, before the intruder returned. A faint sound, a floorboard groaning near the northern hallway, made him duck instinctively. His notebook slipped slightly from his hand, landing on the floor with a muted thud. He scrambled to retrieve it, careful to avoid disturbing the dust or any potential footprints. As he stood, he noticed a shadow retreating toward the gallery exit. Whoever it was had moved faster than he could track, leaving behind the envelope a few deliberate smudges on the ledgers, and a lingering sense of urgency. Nathaniel's eyes scanned the room, the artifacts, and the faded photographs. The message was clear. Someone had been here, someone knowledgeable, and someone daring. And now, Nathaniel realized, the museum was no longer just a place of preservation. It had become a puzzle, a test, and a trap. He took a deep breath, steadying himself. One thing was certain. He couldn't solve this alone. Every note, every trace, every anomaly was a clue. But he needed help, insight. And time he didn't have. Nathaniel closed the ledgers carefully, resecured the glass, and whispered under his breath, "History is watching. And now, so am I." Nathaniel stepped out of the gallery into the shadowed corridor, his footsteps muted against the worn marble floor. The museum, usually bustling with students, tourists, and curators, was now silent except for the faint hum of the climate control system and the occasional creak of the old building settling. The faint metallic scent lingered, mingling with dust and the subtle perfume of polished wood. He clutched the notebook to his chest, flipping back to the cryptic envelope's message. History does not forgive the careless. Check the ledger. Every word seemed heavier in the dim light. Someone had carefully orchestrated this, leaving hints in plain sight for him to find. But why him? Turning the corner, he noticed a small surveillance camera in the northern wing, angled to cover the empty hall. Its red recording light blinked steadily. Whoever had been in the gallery had left subtle traces, yet had also made sure he was being observed. Nathaniel's pulse quickened. Someone wanted him to see this, to uncover something specific, but with caution. He pulled out his phone, dialing a number he rarely used. Detective Allison Reed, a calm voice answered. "Allison, it's Nathaniel," he said quietly, careful not to be overheard. "I need your eyes on something. Something unusual in the West Wing. Can you come tonight?" There was a pause. You've got me intrigued. I'll be there in 20. He hung up and returned to the gallery, retracing his steps. The envelope, the smudged ledgers, the faint shadow, everything formed a thread, a path that led somewhere deeper than a simple theft. The music box. That was the focal point. The artifact, small but intricately carved, was rumored to contain a hidden compartment. Nathaniel had read accounts suggesting it once held a map or schematic, a key to a private collection amassed during the early 1900s. Few believed the story, dismissing it as legend. Yet the precision of the intruder's actions suggested otherwise. Nathaniel examined the display case carefully, noting tiny scratches on the glass that might indicate tampering. He documented each mark in his notebook. Whoever had been here had touched the case but had taken care not to trigger the silent alarm. That attention to detail was unsettling. Footsteps echoed from the stairwell behind him. He froze. The sound wasn't casual, slow, measured, deliberate. He ducked behind a pedestal, notebook in hand, and watched as a figure descended. The light caught the side of a face, pale, white, with sharp features, but the rest was obscured by shadows. The figure paused mid-step, glancing around as if checking for disturbances, then continued, moving toward the gallery exit. Nathaniel exhaled quietly. The person was leaving, but the knowledge that someone had been inside moments before tightened the knot of tension in his chest. He knelt by the music box's case, taking meticulous notes. Dimensions, carvings, hinge mechanisms, minute irregularities. The more he recorded, the more he noticed patterns, subtle engravings that could represent coordinates or a cipher. He made sketches, annotating them with measurements down to millimeters. The sound of distant sirens reminded him that time was limited. The museum would not stay empty indefinitely, and any interruption could compromise the trail the intruder had laid out. Nathaniel needed more than his observations. He needed expertise. Detective Reed arrived, her flashlight cutting through the darkness of the main hall. Her presence brought a strange reassurance. She was methodical, precise, and known for seeing what others missed. "Show me what you found," she said. Her voice steady but carrying an undercurrent of curiosity. Nathaniel handed over the notebook and the envelope. "It's all connected," he said. "Every movement, every mark, even the scratches, they're a map. A path leading to something hidden." Reed leaned in, scanning the notes. "Someone went to great lengths to make this a puzzle," she murmured. "And you're telling me they want you to solve it?" Nathaniel nodded. "They've left breadcrumbs, but it's deliberate. I can't shake the feeling they're testing not just the museum, but me." They spent hours cross-referencing the ledger entries with the museum's archives, focusing on acquisition dates, donor initials, and artifact descriptions. The pattern became clearer. Entries highlighted items removed under the guise of restoration, donations that never existed, artifacts whose provenance was intentionally obscured. And always, a subtle sequence of letters and numbers, hidden, almost imperceptible, yet precise. "This isn't just theft," Reed said quietly. "It's about control. About rewriting history without anyone noticing." Nathaniel glanced at the music box again, feeling its weight, not physically, but in significance. It held answers, but also danger. Someone had crafted this trail knowing the stakes, aware that discovery would draw attention. A sudden noise from the upper gallery made them both tense. The building was not supposed to be occupied, yet the creak of footsteps, light and deliberate, suggested otherwise. Nathaniel motioned Reed to stay low. They watched as a shadow moved past the upper balcony, then disappeared from sight. The night deepened, the air thick with anticipation and a sense of unseen eyes. Nathaniel realized that the museum, a place designed to preserve the past, had become a stage for something far more intricate, a game, carefully orchestrated and far from over. The air in the museum had grown colder, heavier, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Nathaniel and Detective Reed crouched behind a large display of Renaissance-era tapestries, their flashlights scanning the empty corridors for movement. Every step, every faint creak, echoed with the weight of anticipation. "Whoever left these clues," Nathaniel whispered, "they're good. Meticulous. They know the building, the security, the routines. And they knew I'd follow it." Reed nodded, eyes narrowing as she examined the notebook. "Look at these entries," she said, pointing to a series of ledger notations. Every one of these items was supposedly restored in the 1920s, but the dates don't line up with acquisition logs. Someone intentionally falsified records. Nathaniel traced a finger across the faded ink, noting small symbols beside certain entries, dots, triangles, what looked like archaic shorthand. This is more than a trail. It's a cipher. And it's pointing us to something very specific. Maybe even the music box itself. They moved cautiously toward the west wing, the section of the museum that had been closed for decades. Dust motes danced in the beam of their flashlights, and the faint smell of aged wood mixed with the cold, metallic scent of the security system. Nathaniel's heart pounded, not from fear, but from the sense that they were close to uncovering the first major piece of the puzzle to the end of the hallway. They found a small, unassuming door, slightly ajar. Nathaniel recognized it from an old floor plan he had studied weeks ago. "This leads to the restoration room," he whispered, "but the records show it hasn't been used in years." Reed pushed the door open, revealing a cramped space filled with stacks of boxes, covered furniture, and the faint glint of glass display cases. On a central table lay the music box, untouched, but with subtle signs that someone had been studying it recently, fingerprints smudged on the varnish. A faint indentation where a tool had been pressed against the edge. Nathaniel knelt, examining the hinges. Someone tried to open it. Carefully. They didn't want to trigger the locking mechanism. That suggests knowledge of its construction, maybe even prior access to the original schematics. Reed crouched beside him, shining her flashlight on the carvings. "See these? They're coordinates. Not geographic, but catalog numbers. Each symbol matches an artifact in the collection, one that's been altered or relocated." Nathaniel's mind raced. It's a chain. Each artifact points to another. And this music box, it's the final piece. Whoever is behind this wants to control the narrative of the entire collection. The sound of a soft shuffle from behind startled them. Reed raised a hand, signaling Nathaniel to stay still. Through the gap between two cases, they saw a figure, a man in a pale shirt, middle-aged, moving cautiously among the stacks of boxes. He carried a small notebook and a pencil, writing down notes as he examined the items. Reed whispered, "We are not alone." Nathaniel nodded, keeping his voice low. "He doesn't know we are here yet. Watch how he moves. There's a pattern. He's meticulous, but not professional. More like obsessive." The man paused at the music box, lifting it carefully and inspecting the carvings. He muttered something under his breath, almost inaudible, before writing in his notebook. The handwriting was precise, small, and deliberate, indicating an organized mind focused on details. Reed flicked her flashlight toward him, and the beam caught his face. He froze, then quickly turned away, shoving the music box back onto the table. Nathaniel stepped forward, raising his hand slightly in a gesture of calm. "Wait," he said, voice steady. "We don't want to hurt you. We just want to understand what you're doing here." The man hesitated, then spoke in a low tone. "You don't understand. This collection, it's a map, a record, what I'm trying to preserve. History doesn't forgive mistakes, and someone is rewriting it." Nathaniel exchanged a glance with Reed. They were dealing with someone obsessed, but also deeply knowledgeable. This was not a simple theft. This was a deliberate manipulation of history, hidden in plain sight, and the music box was the key. Reed's voice cut through the tension. "Who are you?" The man's eyes darted to the music box, then back to them. "Call me Elliot," he said. "And you have no idea what you've just stumbled into." Nathaniel's pulse quickened. This was no ordinary museum mystery. Elliot's obsession had layers, connections, and consequences that went beyond the gallery walls. The night had just begun, and the full story of the collection, the cipher, and the music box was still waiting to be unraveled. The tension in the restoration room lingered like a heavy fog. Elliot stepped back from the music box, eyes darting nervously between Nathaniel and Detective Reed. His notebook was clutched tightly in one hand, pencil tapping idly against the cover. "I need you to understand something," Elliot said, voice low but urgent. "This isn't just a music box. It's a repository, a record of secrets that have been hidden for decades. Every carving, every symbol, it links to a piece of history someone wanted erased." Nathaniel crouched beside the table, careful not to disturb the fragile artifact. "How do you know all this?" he asked. "Have you been following the collection for years?" Elliot shook his head. "No. I was involved in cataloging some of these items decades ago, but the full extent of what's hidden here only became clear recently. Someone else has been tampering with the collection, altering records, moving pieces, creating a trail. I've been trying to reconstruct it, but I can't do it alone. Reed's eyes narrowed. And you thought breaking into a closed museum at night was the best way to handle this? Elliot swallowed, glancing at the door as if imagining unseen security cameras. I had no choice. I needed access to the original music box. It's the anchor. Everything else hinges on it. If it's moved or altered, the entire chain of evidence is lost. Nathaniel's fingers traced the edges of the box. The craftsmanship was exquisite, each symbol carved with painstaking detail. You said it's a repository. What does it hold? Elliot's gaze was distant, haunted. Information. Notes, documents, even confessions. Things people wanted hidden. The music box has a compartment, cleverly disguised. Only those who know the pattern can open it. Reed leaned closer, examining the carvings. The symbols you mentioned. The catalogue numbers. If we follow them, we might be able to map the entire collection and uncover what's been hidden. Elliot nodded, relief flickering across his features. Exactly. But it's not just about uncovering the items. It's about understanding the connections. Each object, each symbol, tells a story. Stories of betrayal, greed, and sometimes worse. And someone out there doesn't want these stories told. Nathaniel glanced at the darkened hallway outside the room, thinking of the long night ahead. We'll help you, he said. But we do this methodically. No rash moves. Every step has to be documented. Elliot hesitated, then handed his notebook to Nathaniel. These are the notes I've gathered so far. It's incomplete, fragmented, but it's a start. There are codes, cross-references. Some of it may not make sense at first, but it all leads back to the music box. Reed's eyes scanned the pages quickly. This is meticulous work. Whoever tampered with the collection, they weren't amateurs. And you've been reconstructing their path. Yes, Elliot whispered, almost to himself. I'm trying to finish what they started, to reveal the truth before it's lost forever. Nathaniel flipped through the notebook, noting small sketches of artifacts, lines connecting them to symbols, and shorthand codes. This is going to take hours, maybe days. But we can start by decoding the symbols on the music box. Elliot moved closer, pointing to a series of triangles and dots etched along the edge. Each symbol corresponds to an item. The triangles indicate items that were removed from public records, and the dots mark pieces that have been relocated. If you follow the pattern correctly, it will reveal the order, the path to the compartment, and what's inside. Reed's hand hovered over the box. You're saying there's a hidden compartment right here? Elliot nodded. Yes, but it's delicate. One wrong move, and the mechanism locks permanently. And if that happens, everything, the chain, the records, the secrets, are gone. Nathaniel studied the carvings, mentally tracing the paths from triangles to dots, trying to see the logic Elliot had described. The room seemed to hold its breath. Dust floated lazily in the beam of their flashlights, and the distant hum of the museum's security system sounded impossibly loud. Finally, Nathaniel whispered, We follow the symbols, step by step. We open it carefully, document everything, and no one touches anything else until we know what we are dealing with. Elliot exhaled slowly, a flicker of hope in his eyes. Then we start. They positioned themselves around the table, each aware of the magnitude of the moment. One wrong move, one misinterpretation of the symbols, and the secrets locked inside could be lost forever. Nathaniel's hands hovered over the box, Reed's flashlight steady in her grip, and Elliot guided them, muttering soft instructions under his breath. The first click of the hidden latch echoed like a gunshot in the silent room. Dust shifted. Shadows danced across the walls. They were on the cusp of discovery, and the night's events would change everything they thought they knew about the museum, the collection, and the history it held. The hidden compartment of the music box revealed itself slowly. A faint click followed by a soft hiss, almost imperceptible in the quiet of the restoration room. Nathaniel's hands trembled slightly as he lifted the small lid, revealing a tightly rolled parchment and a compact metallic cylinder. Dust motes danced in the beam of Reed's flashlight. Catching the tension in the air, Elliot leaned in closer, whispering, That cylinder. It's an audio recording, probably decades old. The parchment may explain its origin. Nathaniel carefully extracted the parchment, unrolling it with reverent caution. The handwriting was faint, elegant, looping script that seemed almost ceremonial. Symbols and dates annotated the edges, hinting at a series of events long buried. This is a log, he murmured. Someone meticulously documented each recording, each artifact, each incident. It's like a diary of secrets. Reed's eyes scanned the cylinder, recognizing the label, a faintly embossed series of numbers and letters. Microcassette? Or some kind of miniature reel? She asked. Reel to reel, Elliot replied. But compact. They were trying to conceal it, not just store it. Whoever made this, they knew it held sensitive information. Nathaniel nodded, carefully placing the parchment on the table beside the music box. We need a player. And we need to record it digitally immediately. We can't risk losing the original audio. Elliot exhaled, rubbing the bridge of his nose. There's an old player in the archives downstairs. We can bring it up here. But we have to work fast. The longer this stays out, the greater the risk someone notices it missing. Reed glanced toward the shadowy hall, then back at the compartment. Do we even know what we are about to hear? Not exactly, Elliot admitted. But every recording in this collection was meant to document wrongdoing, exposure, confessions, sometimes threats. It's a record of people who believed their secrets would remain hidden forever. This one likely contains the first direct link to the person manipulating the collection. Nathaniel carefully lifted the cylinder, brushing off the dust, and handed it to Elliot. Do you want to handle the playback? Elliot nodded, gently placing the cylinder into a small portable player he had brought. The tape hissed to life. Mechanical was accompanied by a faint static crackle. The room fell silent, the only sound the soft whine of the tape motor. Then a voice emerged. Clear, deliberate, and unmistakably human. To whom it may concern, if you have found this recording, you now hold the first piece of evidence regarding the events that transpired at the Ravenswood estate. What you hear may shock, but it is truth, unfiltered, and necessary. Keep this safe. Follow the sequence of recordings to understand the full story. Do not deviate. Elliot's jaw tightened. This is exactly what I was hoping for. The sequence. The instructions. Whoever made this wanted the chain of events to be preserved in case they didn't survive or were silenced. Nathaniel leaned forward, listening intently. It's like a time capsule. A confession hidden inside layers of secrecy. Whoever recorded this anticipated it would be discovered. Reed whispered, almost to herself, and they trusted that the right people would find it. The recording continued, describing events with unnerving precision. Names, dates, locations, mentions of stolen documents, misplaced artifacts, and deliberate obfuscations in public records. Each word added weight, revealing a web of manipulation spanning decades. Nathaniel jotted notes rapidly, linking dates from the parchment to the audio. Elliot guided him, pointing out patterns and symbols that confirmed their theory. This collection was more than just artifacts. It was a chronicle of hidden histories, of people who sought to erase inconvenient truths. As the voice detailed the first major cover-up, Reed felt the chill of the room deepen. The walls seemed to close in, shadows stretching unnaturally as the tale of betrayal, greed, and secrecy unfolded. It wasn't just historical curiosity. It was evidence of real human ambition and danger, meticulously documented. The tape hissed, then paused unexpectedly, as if deliberately inserted to give them time to process the magnitude of what they had just heard. Elliot's eyes were fixed on the cylinder, fingers lightly brushing its surface. We are holding the first domino, he murmured. Everything else falls from here. Nathaniel closed his notebook briefly, breathing deeply. We have to be careful. Whoever set this up, they planned for every step to be traced. If we miss something, we could destroy the trail. Reed glanced at both men, the tension almost palpable. And if someone else finds out what we've discovered first? Elliot didn't answer immediately. He simply tapped the parchment and the cylinder, then looked straight at them. Then we are in a race. Not for the artifacts themselves, but for the truth buried inside them. And the world doesn't know it yet. The room fell silent again, except for the faint whir of the tape player. Outside, the museum seemed asleep, unaware that within its walls, decades of secrets were being unearthed. The recording had left the room heavy with anticipation. Nathaniel, Reed, and Elliot sat around the small wooden table, their notes and the unrolled parchment forming a semicircle of evidence before them. The cylinder hummed quietly in its player, as if holding its breath, waiting for them to continue. And somewhere, beyond the library walls, the past waited silently, ready to confront those willing to uncover it. The first rays of morning crept through the high windows, casting long, angled shadows across the chamber. Nathaniel carefully examined one of the ledgers, a series of meticulously written entries that spanned decades. Each line contained names, dates, and locations, sometimes referencing events in the news, sometimes completely hidden from public record. Reed flipped through the audio tapes, listening intently. The voices on the recordings described transfers, agreements, and exchanges with an almost ritualistic precision. Each word seemed deliberately chosen, each pause measured. It was as if the person speaking wanted the future to hear every detail, yet only under the right conditions. Elliot moved toward the pedestal, where the diary lay open, its pages delicate but intact. "Look at this," he said, tracing the inked lines. "These entries reference meetings, exchanges, and negotiations that don't appear anywhere else. Whoever wrote this was meticulous, almost obsessive." Nathaniel nodded. "And notice the pattern. Every date aligns with a historical event. Sometimes they coincide with political milestones, sometimes with economic changes. It's as if they were influencing events through these artifacts." Reed leaned closer. "We need to map this. If we can cross-reference the diary entries with public events, maybe we can understand the motive." Elliot grabbed a large sheet of paper and began drawing lines connecting names and dates. "See this? The tapes mention transfers in 1989, 1991, 1994. Each one corresponds with a change in ownership or a news story about the estate. Whoever orchestrated this wasn't just stealing or hiding, they were rewriting perception." Nathaniel looked at the network of lines and names. "This is bigger than we thought. And whoever did this was smart enough to make it almost impossible to trace. Every ledger, every tape. It's a breadcrumb trail, but only for someone determined enough to follow it." The trio worked for hours, cataloging, noting, and analyzing each piece. By afternoon, the first patterns emerged. Names repeated, often associated with financial transactions or secretive correspondence. Locations appeared consistently, suggesting a network that spanned states. Reed pointed at a set of dates. "These all cluster around specific auctions and museum acquisitions. Whoever orchestrated this was positioning artifacts deliberately, controlling what the public could see and what would remain hidden." Elliot nodded. "And these tapes, listen. They often mention verifying perception, ensuring that no mistakes are visible to outsiders. The diary explains why." Nathaniel flipped a page. "It's not theft. It's strategy. Psychological manipulation. They didn't just want to hide history, they wanted to shape memory, to influence understanding." As the sun dipped lower, casting golden light across the chamber, Reed leaned back, exhaling. "This is more than a mystery. It's a web of deception that's been carefully crafted for decades. And now we are untangling it." The room remained silent, save for the quiet hum of the tape player and the soft rustling of paper. The trio continued working, piecing together fragments of the past into a coherent, if disturbing, story. Night had fallen outside the museum, the sky a deep indigo streaked with clouds. The three researchers continued to work by the dim glow of portable lamps. The chamber felt almost alive, the shadows stretching and contracting as they moved between shelves. Reed's flashlight landed on a small, sealed envelope tucked behind a bundle of ledgers. "Nathaniel, look at this," she whispered. She carefully pulled it free. The envelope was old, leather-bound, and sealed with wax that bore a symbol matching the diary's entries. Elliot leaned over. "Open it carefully. This could be another key." Nathaniel broke the seal gently, unfolding the contents. Inside were photographs, black and white images of people posing with artifacts, some smiling, others serious. Each photo had names, dates, and cryptic annotations in the corner. "These are the people mentioned in the tapes," Nathaniel said. "It's a visual record, almost like a ledger in picture form. We can see who was involved, when, and possibly why." Reed examined the annotations. "Some of these names correspond to events we've researched. Others, I've never heard of. But the symbols next to their names, they're consistent, like a secret code marking importance or trustworthiness." Elliot pointed to a series of photos. "Notice the settings: museums, private collections, auctions. Whoever this was, they weren't just collecting, they were curating perception. Every image placed strategically, every record designed to guide understanding. Nathaniel exhaled. And here's the chilling part. Some people are repeated, over decades, suggesting loyalty, complicity, or manipulation. This wasn't accidental. As they studied the photographs, a faint echo of movement from the museum corridor caught their attention. A shadow flickered outside the chamber door. Reed tensed. "We are not alone," she whispered. Elliot's hand went to the flashlight. "Probably security," he said cautiously. "But we need to be careful. This collection, it's sensitive. People might not want it discovered." They continued their work, cataloging every image, cross-referencing annotations with the diaries and tapes. The patterns began to form a complex network, one that suggested not just historical manipulation but a meticulous psychological strategy spanning generations. Nathaniel looked at the growing map of connections. This is bigger than any of us imagined. The network, the deception, the influence. It's a system built to control perception itself. And we've uncovered the map. The night deepened, shadows thickening around the edges of the chamber. Outside, the city slept unaware, while inside, history's hidden architects were slowly revealed through ink, photographs, and recordings. By early morning, exhaustion was evident on all three faces, but the discovery kept them focused. The diary had revealed yet another layer, coded instructions referencing hidden locations within private estates, each containing additional documentation or artifacts. Reed traced a finger along a page. These codes, they're like a scavenger hunt, but for knowledge and control. Each step ensures secrecy, and each misstep could destroy the trail entirely. Nathaniel nodded, looking over maps laid across the table. "We need to follow this trail if we want to understand fully. Each artifact, each document, it all leads somewhere. Or to someone." Elliot scribbled notes rapidly. "We should plan a field investigation, but carefully. The moment someone realizes these documents are missing or being studied, we could face obstruction, or worse." The team worked silently, the weight of their discovery pressing on them. They were unraveling not just a hidden history, but a hidden motive, intentional manipulation designed to influence understanding across decades. As the sun rose, casting pale light across the chamber, Reed stood and stretched. "Every time we think we've mapped it, there's another layer, another secret, another manipulation." Nathaniel's eyes were fixed on a photograph pinned with coded symbols. And yet, the patterns are consistent. The more we uncover, the clearer the strategy becomes. Whoever did this, they thought generations ahead. Elliot nodded. "That's what makes it brilliant. And terrifying. They controlled perception without anyone realizing it. And until now, almost no one could see it." By the following night, the team's temporary workspace in the museum resembled an evidence board straight out of a conspiracy thriller, strings connecting photos, newspaper clippings, and transcripts of the tapes. Every inch of the wall was layered with decades of hidden coordination. Nathaniel had barely slept. His eyes, heavy but alert, scanned the interconnected lines again and again. "We are seeing a timeline of influence," he murmured. This wasn't a group of collectors. It was an organization shaping narratives for profit, or maybe ideology. Reed leaned against the wall, arms folded. The documents suggest funding through shell companies. They purchased artifacts, restored them, and conveniently rewrote their provenance before placing them back into the market. Elliot scribbled notes. "That's not just laundering artifacts. That's laundering truth." Nathaniel turned toward him. "Exactly. If you control what history says, you control what people believe about the past. And by extension, the present." Outside, rain began to patter against the museum's tall windows. The sound was soft but persistent, the kind of rhythm that made the room feel isolated from the rest of the world. Reed examined a taped interview transcript from one of the recovered recordings. "There's a voice here that doesn't match any listed member. Female, calm, precise. She seems to be dictating instructions." Elliot leaned closer. "Play it again." Reed pressed play. The tape crackled, then a steady female voice filled the air. "Documentation must remain intact. Public perception depends on consistency. Should discrepancies arise, adjust the record, never the object. People believe paper more than memory." Silence followed. Nathaniel felt a chill crawl up his spine. "She's describing historical control like it's bookkeeping." adjusting memory to fit narrative. Reed shut the recorder off. She believed it. Whoever she wasn't improvising, she was following a doctrine. Elliot added quietly, and someone is still following it. The three exchanged glances. The implication was clear. The system hadn't stopped. It had merely evolved. 2 days later, in a quiet suburb outside Boston, the trio followed one of the coded coordinates from a diary. The address led to a forgotten estate, partially reclaimed by vines and surrounded by mist from the river. The property had belonged to a historian named Robert Hensley, a man who disappeared in 2003 without public explanation. According to the coded entries, Hensley had been one of the custodians, someone entrusted to guard a fragment of the secret archive. Reed parked the car on the overgrown driveway. "You sure this is legal?" she asked, half joking, half anxious. Nathaniel replied softly, "If the documents are real, this place is a piece of American memory no one was meant to find." They stepped inside through a half-open door. Dust motes floated through shafts of light slicing the gloom. Books lined the walls, some stacked knee-high across the floor. In one corner, a phonograph sat beside a stack of labeled reels. Elliot crouched near the desk. "Same handwriting as the ledger in the museum," he whispered. Hensley was part of it. Reed flipped through a stack of letters. Each bore the same wax seal as the one on the envelope from the museum. Inside were instructions: when to move items, when to replace them, how to fabricate acquisition histories. Nathaniel found a locked drawer in the desk. He pried it open gently with a penknife. Inside, wrapped in faded linen, was a small box, identical to the one from the museum. Elliot exhaled. He had his own archive piece. They placed it carefully on the table. The air seemed to grow colder as they opened it. Inside were more photographs, but these were modern, color images from the 1980s and 1990s. Each showed the same woman who had spoken on the tape, standing near various archives and collections. Her expression was unreadable. Reed frowned. "Who is she?" Nathaniel stared at the photo. The woman on the tape. She wasn't just giving orders. She was overseeing it all. The final photo in the box sent a shiver down his spine. The woman standing in front of the same museum they had just left, taken only a few years before they began their research back at the museum. Their discovery raised new questions and an uneasy realization. The voice on the tape hadn't been from decades ago. The timestamps matched a much later period than they'd assumed. The system wasn't an artifact of history. It was still operating. Reed ran her hand over the table. If she was there in those photos, it means she was active up until recently, which means someone, maybe several people, are still curating these manipulations. Elliot nodded grimly. "That also means they know we found them." Nathaniel stared at the city lights outside the window. "This explains the shadow in the corridor. The feeling we weren't alone. Someone's been monitoring us since the beginning." A knock echoed through the chamber. 3 sharp raps. Then silence. Reed froze. "That's not security." Elliot grabbed a flashlight, moving toward the door. But when he opened it, the hallway was empty, except for a single envelope lying on the floor. The same wax seal. Nathaniel picked it up, hand steady but heart racing. Inside, a single note read, "You've gone far enough. The archive remains unseen for a reason. Walk away before you become part of it." Silence swallowed the room. The tape recorder still hummed quietly on the desk. Reed broke the tension. "They know everything we found. The letters, the tapes, even this location. We are not just researchers anymore. We are witnesses." Elliot whispered, "Or threats." Nathaniel looked at both of them. "Then we keep going. If this system controls memory, then the truth, whatever it costs, needs to be remembered." They doubled their efforts. Every file was scanned, every recording transcribed. Nathaniel began documenting their findings in a private encrypted journal. Reed traced connections across decades of cultural manipulation, edited museum archives, rewritten historical papers, fabricated academic studies. Every layer was designed to reinforce a controlled version of reality. Late one night, while cross-referencing Hensley's documents, Elliot made a chilling discovery. "Guys, look at this." He turned the laptop toward them. Several names that appear in the records are still active museum directors today. Nathaniel frowned. So the system passed down, successors trained to continue the pattern. Reed whispered, "Which means this isn't a conspiracy. It's a legacy. Outside, thunder rumbled. The storm had rolled in again. As if echoing the tension within the room, Elliot leaned back. We can't expose this with a paper or a press release. It's too structured. Too protected. The moment we publish, we disappear. Nathaniel closed his notebook slowly. Then we don't publish yet. We document everything. Make copies. Hide them. If they silence one of us, the rest continues. Reed nodded. Truth doesn't vanish when it's shared. The three exchanged a silent vow. In that dimly lit chamber, surrounded by the fragments of a rewritten history, they became the very thing the system feared most, uncontrolled witnesses. Weeks passed. The investigation consumed their lives. Every new revelation expanded the web further, pulling in museums, universities, and private collectors. The scale was staggering, but beneath the academic thrill, paranoia took root. Cars idled too long near their apartments. Unknown numbers called at odd hours. Packages arrived unmarked. One evening, Reed failed to appear for their nightly meeting. Her phone went straight to voicemail. Nathaniel and Elliot spent hours searching, only to find her car parked near the river, empty, her bag on the seat. A single envelope lay on the dashboard, sealed with wax. Inside, a short message: some truths are not yours to reveal. Elliot slammed his fist against the steering wheel. They got her. Nathaniel's voice was quiet but firm. Then she's proof we are close. He looked at the skyline beyond the bridge, his reflection merging with the city lights on the water. They built an empire on the silence of others. We'll end it with noise. Months later, the museum exhibit that had sparked everything was quietly dismantled. The official explanation was structural renovations. Unofficially, Nathaniel and Elliot had been banned from university property, but they continued in secret. From a small rented office, they digitized everything: thousands of pages, audio recordings, photographs, and built a secure archive. Their goal was not exposure, but preservation. One night, while uploading the final recordings, Nathaniel found an unlabeled audio file in the folder. He pressed play. The same calm female voice spoke again. Truth is not a discovery, Nathaniel. It's a design. And you're part of it now. He froze. The tape wasn't old. It mentioned details only they could have known from the past weeks. Elliot stared at him. How could she know your name? Nathaniel didn't answer. The hum of the computer filled the silence. On the screen, the upload bar reached 100%. The archive was live, immutable, irreversible. He leaned back and whispered, now it belongs to everyone. Outside, the city pulsed with indifferent light. Somewhere in the dark, unseen watchers realized control had slipped, not lost to exposure, but to the permanence of the truth. The screen flickered once, then stabilized. The archive had replicated across hundreds of mirrored servers worldwide. The system built to hide history had just become history itself. End of story.